Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of the Raise Your Game podcast, brought to you by 226 Sports. And I'm the host of this podcast. My name is Brett Swip. Some of you may be familiar with other podcasts that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. Hardball Talks is one that I'm still active on. So please check out that podcast on all the platforms. And then welcome to the new Raise Your Game podcast. So let's just talk about where this podcast came from and use this as an opportunity to introduce the group to what Raise Your Game is and 226 Sports. So first off, let's start with 226 Sports. 226 Sports is an organization, a sports family that provides training, provides rentals, provides other products to offer a family-minded experience. And 226 Sports is based on Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart. I've been in the sports industry for the past 25 years, and being in the sports industry, there was many times in the journey that just felt like, we weren't really aligned with what God's plan was for us, or what the platform of sports, why it was made available to us. And that's where 226 came. Had a lot of good friends and family who encouraged us to understand that the platform of sports had a bigger purpose to it and a bigger meaning, and ultimately pointed us towards Proverbs 22:6 to understand that the opportunity to be a constant in a young adult's life and to bring a healthy perspective of sports to the family. And that's where 226 Sports came from. We've had multiple sports brands, and they all have had little individual missions. We've had a strength and conditioning brand that's helped athletes and families have strength conditioning or fitness as part of their lives. We've had baseball and softball training brands that have been specific to helping young adults or young children fall in love with the game of baseball and softball. We've had golf brands. All of these brands, though, were connected by a bigger purpose, which is to provide the simpler, healthier environment of sports. And I think we all have been exposed to some of the unhealthy things of sports, the idols that it can cause, or the distractions that it can be away from our families or our church, or ultimately our relationship with the Lord. And it's become our motivation to provide an environment that connects us back into that, and using the gifts and the talents that we have in the platform of sports to keep Christ centered and keep the athletes, keep it athlete centered as well. So that's 226 Sports, and it's led to this phrase, "Raise Your Game." And I just want to kind of share where that maybe came from, or where we started using it or started talking about it. And I'm going to kind of kick off that explanation with a story. This was probably 3-4 years ago. I went to a youth soccer game to watch my son, and it was at a facility, 30 or 45 minutes away. So not a facility that I was too familiar with. And I remember walking up to that facility, and all over the fences and all over the screens, was the phrase, "Respect the ref." And maybe you've seen those before. It's kind of a common theme in the Midwest to encourage the fans and encourage the coaches to be good sportsmen, and to, stay in there, stay in the right frame of mind, and be good examples for all the kids playing, to respect the ref and make sure that, we're not being part of the problem as fans, and discouraging people from wanting to be refs, and not, showcasing the wrong behavior to our athletes. And so I remember seeing it that day. It was kind of a cold, chilly day, and they were all over. These banners were everywhere. Excuse me. And when I saw them, I remember thinking to myself, like, it's somewhat of a shame that we have to have a campaign at a sports facility that tells us to be respectful. I know that really that's just how we should be as humans. You could change that noun of refs to anything else. Respect the opposing team, respect the coaches, respect the athletes, respect the concession stand worker. Like, you could change that noun to be anything. And you should live that way. You should live in a state of respect for others and empathy for others. But something else kind of stood out to me that day, though. The darn it. Something else stood out to me that day, which was the field that we were on. There were two drastically different refs, and it was, if I'm going to be honest, it was easier to respect one of the refs. And of course, I firmly believe in respecting both, independent of who that person is or how they do, or if they pursue excellence in their job, if they want to be there as a ref or a coach or a concession worker or whatever. But I want to talk about why one of them really stood out. So this was a young man, and he couldn't have been more than 18, 19, 20 years old. And he was reffing on the near sideline, which was the sideline by the parents. And if you're a soccer fan, I assume that the side judge or the sideline ref on the side of the fans is maybe not the most sought after role in a soccer game. And across the field, over by the coaches and the benches, was an older ref. But I just want to speak on the one that was near us and the fans. He really stood out. And why did he stand out? It was very evident that he loved his job. It was very evident that he was passionate about doing it correctly. It was very evident that he brought great effort. It was, he dressed the part perfectly. You could tell that, he took the time to have all the correct uniform pieces. I remember him helping the athletes, whether it was giving them pieces of advice on, where to set the ball or how to properly do the throw in or whatever it may be. He had this kind of servant leader mindset, and he just stood out. It ended up becoming a talking point on the sideline from all of us family members about this young man and just how much he loved and wanted to do his job as that sideline ref. He wanted to do his job well. And I remember thinking, it's really easy to respect this ref, independent of, I don't even remember if he made bad calls or good calls. I don't remember if we won the game or lost the game. None of that really stands out to me. My sons don't even play soccer anymore. So but that, I very clearly can picture that young man. He had dark hair. He was a little bit taller. Like I said, a younger guy. Whatever he's going to do in life, I would bet on that guy. And, I remember coming back from that experience, thinking of those signs that said respect the ref, and thinking about, man, it's easy to respect somebody when they raise their game. Like when they push the envelope, when they bring passion and leadership and care and effort. Like, it was super simple that day to respect that young man and just be in awe of who he was as a ref. And ultimately, that, in one of our staff meetings following that experience, I remember sharing that with our staff, and we just kind of talked about, how we as coaches and trainers and parents and whatever role it is that you're in, there's a way to raise your game. There's a way to elevate. There's a way to stand out. There's a way to to be different. And that's what 226 Sports is. And that's what I hope to share more stories of and examples of as we go down this journey of this Raise Your Game podcast. Some of those characteristics that we noticed or that I noticed in that young man, those are the same characteristics that we want to help elevate our athletes or help our families experience? Yes, we're in the sports industry. So when you're in the sports industry, everybody wants to talk about the wins, the losses, the transactions. But ultimately, what can we learn from that industry? Like I said, I don't know if my son's team won. I don't know, what that young man is doing now, but I definitely know that he was on a good track to be successful in life. And that's what we want to provide at 226 Sports. We want to, of course, help whatever it is, whatever product it is that we're providing you, whatever service is, we want to provide that to the athlete or to the family. But ultimately, we want to help that individual or that family raise their game. And that's where this podcast and this phrase came from. I want to just talk like what is in our minds, when we think of raise your game at 226 Sports, like what do we think of? I just want to give a few phrases. So it's not perfection. It's not a pursuit of perfection. Ultimately, I'm not sure perfection. Well, I know perfection is not achievable by any of us humans. And I don't know that that's what we should be striving for. We should be striving for to lead a life that matches our Lord and does have, improvements, but ultimately we are going to fall short. And because we're going to fall short, we need to make sure that our hearts and our minds are in the correct place. That correct place is a pursuit of excellence or a continuous improvement. I'm sure that young man has made plenty of mistakes in his reffing career. And if he hasn't, he's going to. And I'm sure he's given out yellow cards and red cards. I'm sure he's kicked out a fan. I'm sure that he's, made bad calls, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I know that young man is pursuing excellence. He has a continuous improvement mindset or focus. And to me, that's biblical. That's what we should be in pursuit of, is the best version that the Lord wants us to be. And ultimately, that's what we want to help our customers with. We want to help those families and those athletes pursue their best version in a healthy way that's not just focused on the transactions. That's the mindset. That's the focus of 226 Sports. So what does that look like? I was in a training session recently, and I asked the athletes if they'd ever heard of the phrase growth mindset. And a young lady raised her hand, and she said, yes, my teacher has a sign hanging up in my science class that says growth mindset is better than a locked mindset. And I asked her, what does that mean? And, to her, what did she remember that sign? I'm assuming her teacher kind of talked about that. And she spoke on that, having a locked mindset was one that was not willing to learn, was not willing to try new things, was not willing to get uncomfortable. And to hear this was a 13-year-old young lady in a training session that I was leading, and to hear her say that, and man, I was grinning. There's many of us, old people that don't know the difference between growth mindset and fixed mindset or locked mindset. And to hear this young lady say that, kudos to that teacher who really is really encouraging this young lady to step out into uncomfortable places. And that was a perfect example. She was willing to speak up in a group of other 13-year-old ladies. And you can imagine for young adults, that's uncomfortable. That's not an easy thing to do. So to see her willing to do that, and if I could see that professor or that teacher, I would love to tell them that story and the impact that they have made on that young lady by helping her understand what a growth mindset is. A growth mindset is living outside of your comfort zone. And we talk about this very regularly inside of the doors at 226 Sports. The athletes, the customers, the families that really positively experience what 226 Sports is about, they bring to the table a growth mindset, or they're just starting to have a growth mindset, and they want to expand on that. They know that their fixed mindset will keep their experience in sports very short-sighted, very short-term focused. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We hear families that have the correct mindset. They talk about that. I mentioned to you, my sons don't even play soccer anymore. I don't even know if they won that game. So if I only had a short-term mindset, I wouldn't have understood why I was in that experience or why my family was in that experience. But because, we believe in sort of this constant, this constant pursuit of growth, or this constant pursuit of getting uncomfortable or stretching outside of our comfort zone, we're willing to learn why we are supposed to have that experience. And to be honest, maybe it wasn't even a positive experience. I don't know, but maybe my son's coach was bad that year, or, my son's team lost all the time, or maybe, maybe that year was one of the reasons why my son doesn't play soccer anymore. I don't know, but that's definitely not our focus. That's definitely not our pursuit as a family, and that's not our pursuit at 226 Sports. We want our athletes, our coaches, our trainers, our families, we want you to have uncomfortable, growth-minded conversations. We want you to have long-term focus on what the platform of sports is for and why it's there. There's a phrase that we really believe in, which is breakthrough happens only on the outside of comfort, or on the other side of uncomfortable. You have to get out of the comfort zone. You have to get uncomfortable. Some of our training environments are different. They're not typical. They're not, let's say we're doing a defensive class where we're working on some baseball defense. A typical class might be, more get in a line, do ground balls, lots of reps. We may do more dry stuff or mirror stuff, or, breaking things down, or putting pressure on the athlete. We might spend some time having conversations about, recently I was training an athlete and I noticed that they were not in the right headspace. Their effort was changing. And I knew that, their effort wasn't normal than what they've been normally giving. So I paused, had a conversation, asked some questions, and I found out that there were some tough things going on in their life, in their day. So we spent a little bit of time talking about that and trying to get to a better headspace. That doesn't always look the same. It looks different. We call that sort of swimming against the current, right? Making sure that our athlete is, we're focused on the athlete first and what they need in that environment. So I just kind of wanted to wrap this up by, or just, kick off this podcast by sharing what some of our, foundational values are. Where did this raise your game concept come from? Where does 226 Sports stem? And hopefully in this journey of this new podcast, you'll get to see what some of our goals are, why we have integrated some of our sports organizations kind of into one organization, one mission, one platform, one website, all in an effort to keep us very mission focused and keep us centered around helping you elevate your family, elevate your athletes, and trying to get you to really have a positive experience in the platform of sports. So I hope that this was an encouraging message. I hope you got to learn a little bit more about where 226 Sports and Raise Your Game came from. And as I embark on this journey of sharing more experiences and hopefully adding value to you and your family, I hope that you'll join along and subscribe and be a part of the journey. Until next time, thank you for listening to the very first episode of the Raise Your Game podcast.
Yeah, we about to lift off. Hey, been here too long. Y'all better wake up. Time for a new song.